Welcome to the High Rise Podcast, presented by Headset, the leading data and analytics company for the cannabis industry.
Welcome back to the High Rise, a laid-back, data-back conversation on all things cannabis, where we talk about U.S. MSOs, Canadian LPs, products, and market analysis through the lens of data. My name is Cy Scott with Headset, and I am joined, as always, by Emily Paxia of Poseidon.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the High Rise.
It's great to be back. Gosh, we missed last week, I think because of travel, as usual.
Yeah. Did we miss 2 weeks? No, we got it off before you went to the Lyft conference in Trono. And then I was in Nueva York for MJ Unpacked. So yeah, I think we were passing ships last week. And so here we are.
Yeah, here we are back from these events. So yeah, it was my first time back to Canada since, I guess, the pandemic started. You know, we have a lot of clients in Canada. You know, we work with a lot of retailers in Canada, a lot of the brands. It was good to be back, and it felt, I didn't realize like how much I know a certain area of Toronto just from going so much. It was like, It was like a weird, like, oh yeah, I remember all of this. The Lyft conference, so I was able to speak there as part of the Cannavest program. I got to admit, it was pretty disappointing. Ooh. Yeah, I guess, you know, we talk about Canada quite a bit and the challenges Canada operators have had in just the industry. And I think I remember Lyft&Co, which is kind of the big Canadian event. It's like the MJ Biz of Canada, right? And in 2018, it was massive, just the amount of excitement and energy, because it was like, what's on the other side of this legalization? Could be anything, right? And all the brands were there. And Lyft&Co also has a consumer day, right? So you had the brands that were setting up to just get consumers excited about their brands. There's a business conference component, which they had again. And it was in this big auditorium with a large stage and packed house. And, you know, you contrast that with this one. You know, there was hardly any brand exposure there, even though they still had the consumer conference. As far as I understood, I wasn't around for it. Not a lot of brands, so like, you know, not trying to grab those consumers there. And then you know, a lot of like it's like supply stuff, like extraction machines and, you know, pre-roll facilitation. It's just kind of not the most exciting for me. And then the business conference was kind of a dud. I mean, it was a small room off the main stage or the main area, and not the auditorium by any means. You know, maybe had 100 people, maybe had room for 500 people. So yeah, kind of a bummer, and just kind of maybe representative of the Canadian sentiment at the moment, the market sentiment. I mean, not to pin the whole market on Lyft&Co. Obviously, a new company owns it. It's a whole different dynamic, but it just seemed like a good metaphor for kind of the climate out there right now. But Toronto is still a cool city. Love going there, no matter how bad these conferences can be.
Toronto is cool. Were you hanging out in Ossington Street? That was like that Canadian accent.
We did. I did actually.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the hip area, right?
It is the hip area. Yeah, so I was out there a bit. Yeah, it was cool. I got to pop into some shops. Finally got to see, you know, what the retail looks like there. Uh-huh. Pretty good stuff. Also very concentrated, like certain areas. There's just like too many retailers. Yeah. You know, there's a funny, I was able to ride around in an old Rolls Royce with Jay from Business of Cannabis. And we did an interview. And while we were rolling around, we passed like an illicit dispensary that was still open. It was shocking.
Wow.
And, you know, he pointed it out. So he's like, oh, that's illicit. Just crazy, right? That still exists. And Canada's been legal for so long that, I don't know, that makes me a little freaked out for places like California that, you know, still struggle with this stuff, and in other areas, or like New York where you were. And, you know, I'd love to talk about the illicit market there and the world, because, you know, we're in this in-between time with New York. But yeah, interesting to see you still in Canada. So I was there, and you were at MJ Unpacked in New York. Or Nueva,
I was.
New York.
In the following week. You know, Toronto is an interesting... So there's a couple of interesting ways that my life has intersected with, and my dear friend Billy from up on Bay Street tells me you have to say Trono. Like, I can't say Toronto, which is my inclination to enunciate, thanks to my father, but Trono. And I grew up across Lake Ontario looking at Niagara on the Lake across the river and Lake Ontario. We used to sail over to Lake Ontario and spent a lot of time there. The drinking age in Canada was 19, so I spent a fair amount of my early youth there, and in fact procured an ID from Dundas Street in Trono for anyone who's from the region and listening.
No way.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I bet every teenager in Buffalo had a Canadian ID.
Oh, for sure. Well, this was the beauty. It was actually an Illinois ID, but made in Canada.
Okay.
And I gave myself the most nerdy last name after the lead singer of the band Bush because I thought he was so hot. This is so embarrassing. I can't believe I'm
This is real talk here.
Gavin Rostad. Anyway, and so that was my fake ID, or it was a augmented ID. How's that? And so I spent a lot of time in Canada. And then when Morgan and I were standing up Poseidon, I got an inbound from Bruce, which is now what became Canopy Growth Corporation. At the time, it was called Tweed. And we're based in San Francisco, and our first office was in my apartment, which is very near to the Grateful Dead house and Haight-Ashbury. And he was like, Haight-Ashbury hedge fund in cannabis? Like, we need to talk. And so Bruce always knows how to spin things. That's kind of his magic touch. Anyway, that's my intersections with Trono, but I'm looking forward to getting back there because I too have not been in a while. And I remember Ossington Street being quite cool.
You still have that ID?
I do somewhere.
You do somewhere?
Yeah, somehow I didn't get it snatched. Somebody once taught me that if you walk into a place with authority, you tend to do better with those things. So I just always tried to be very brave. It was fun.
Yeah. That's so
Did you ever have one?
I never did. I borrowed one once. Someone had one and it looked like kind of close enough. And we went to a bar that we had heard would serve, even, kind of like knowing a little bit. Because, when you're young, like when you're 19, 20, I mean, you look like a baby, right? And I guess 21, probably not that different, but, as a freshman year of college. So still pretty young, right? 18, 19.
Yeah.
And two other guys, and we walked in and we just went to, there was an Irish pub. So we're just like, 3 Guinness, please. Like that's all. And it worked, but we were terrified, right? Just terrified.
Now it's so scary back then.
But yeah, I never had one myself. It was harder for me to get to Canada to go get a fake one. And I didn't really, have a good lead there, but that's funny. So, but how was New York? So what's going on? I know, did we talk about on a previous show? I think I talked about it, like this crazy illicit market. Like I think Leafly had a great article about it, like all these social clubs where you can get like a membership for $50 a month or whatever. And you get $50 worth of membership gifts, right? Because they can't sell cannabis, but they can gift it. These people have, websites where you can browse online menus, very sophisticated. Did you see any of that out there?
I saw a lot of it. So I was last in New York in December of 2021, was at the New York Stock Exchange. That was a highlight of life. Very cool. But while I was there, I saw quite a few. We were staying in the Lower East Side, which is a lot of fun, and saw a couple illicit market stores. They looked, kind of dodgy, dark, with just like a drop down kind of plastic banner saying, legal cannabis sold here, THC, Delta 9, kind of like pretty bold. But I guess what I was hearing is these kind of pirate shops were popping up, putting those banners up and then getting scooted out and moving on. Not anymore. So in a very quick period of time, I could not. So this time I was staying with my dear friend Tahira down in the Village, and the guys were over in an Airbnb over in the other part of the West Village, kind of closer to the West Side. And so between the two of us, and then between us and MJ Unpacked, which was up in Midtown, I can't even tell you how many dispensaries I counted that were open and that look like ordinary retail companies, like pharmacies, whatever. And, it's right out front is like one of those, what are those, like tented signs that says Delta 9 cannabis available within. Legal. And it says legal. And so,
a chalkboard sign?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
the sandwich board or whatever they call them. Yeah. And so I couldn't believe it. And so the thing that concerns me about this is that We saw this in LA. And I remember talking to Aaron Justice, who has been a long-running cannabis operator in California. He's been on the board of the National Cannabis Industry Association. And here's where the pain point comes. He pays fees and he pays taxes to keep a retail location open within the legal and regulated market. He goes through the code requirements. And there's so many expenses associated with running, and not to mention all the compliance, and we all know this. So then I see these illicit market operators, and I'm one of the first people to acknowledge that we have to honor and respect the heritage cannabis industry, because we wouldn't be here without it. But I don't think it is fair that when people are trying to stand up legal and regulated businesses and are paying the expenses associated with doing so, that it creates this unfair competitive advantage. And we saw this all over Los Angeles. And, we used to joke that it was so easy to know, because if you went on Weed Maps after the time when the legal doors have to be closed, it would light up like a Christmas tree with all the illicit doors, and you could very easily find them and go buy cannabis after hours. It's not a mystery. This is just the fact. And so I am very concerned for New York City metro area, for people who are investing into opening legal and regulated doors, knowing how difficult that competitive landscape can be, and when it gets too far down the road, what it looks like when the regulators try to put it back in the box. And I've started to think about how I would articulate this, because it's concerning when it means, and by the way, this represents a concern for the consumer, because even my dear friends who are in New York, I used to live there, they don't understand the difference between legal, regulated, tested cannabis and the reasons that it's so important. And I was just looking at your report about the vape category data, and I was thinking about, so grateful that we've moved on from Vapegate and the hysteria that was created. And the whole reason for that was the illicit market products. And so now I'm like, here we are exposing the consumers again to untested, unregulated products, sourcing from who knows where. And it's just not a good thing for the future of our industry, because we will be held accountable for whatever gets into that supply chain. If someone should have a bad experience because there's a product that didn't get tested and had some other agents in it, whatever it may be. But, even my friends who know that I do this for a living, and they were just like, oh yeah, cannabis is legal in New York. We're buying it in this shop and it's the same thing. And so I'm just wholly concerned about it. And the way I'm thinking about it is, I don't want anyone to go to prison for this. I think we all know how I feel about that. But I think we need to think about, ticketing people for illegal operations, just like you would ticket a restaurant for a violation of a code for operating, because the whole same thing is, the principles exist. People are trying to follow rules, and people are trying to be safe when consuming cannabis, and we have to take care of all those people. Those are some of my thoughts. I'm pretty concerned about New York, actually.
Yeah, me too. It had a pretty robust illicit market, or has one, for a long time, right? Everyone has a guy that pretty easy to access.
Yeah.
And so kind of cracking that will be tough for like the core consumer, the people that have gone out of their way to buy cannabis in an illegal market. Now, new consumers, okay, maybe they walk by a store, but to your point, they can't discern between an illicit store and a legal store, right? How are they going to know? And then, yeah, for sure, the health and safety issues, that's a real thing. The Vapegate stuff, yeah, while it wasn't legal market, it did impact the legal market, for a minute. You saw vapor pen sales go down, for that same reason. People read the headlines, vapor pens causing illness. And so when they walk into a legal store, it's like, well, I'm just not going to get a vapor pen today. So all very fair concerns, and the sooner that they get in front of it, the better. Yeah, so hopefully it's happening. I know you're involved with groups that, have a retail footprint there. Is it something that comes up, and is there a way to alert New York? Is anybody working on this?
They're working on it. It's a disaster. And I think part of the problem too, which I know we're about to talk about, is they have to get faster and better about licensing and regulating the businesses. Because I'm not saying like only the MSOs should get this. I think these individual operators should have a clear and equitable process to be getting their license. So maybe they are operating illicitly right now and trying to grab whatever revenue they can before the market turns on. But maybe they do have designs to participate in the legal market and plan to apply. But I think if you look at what has gone on in Illinois and some of these other markets, Los Angeles too, it makes it very difficult for someone to feel enticed to participate in the legal supply chain and the legal market. So I think the regulators have to also move forward and get better about these processes so that people who do want to participate can and do. So I'm not saying that all of these folks are just planning to stay illicit. I just think we have to get in front of it, and I think we have to think about it. I definitely don't want anyone going to prison for it. That's not, or unless they're putting something harmful in the products or targeting children. I mean, that's a whole other can of worms. But if they're just trying to sell products in the adult use market, they just have to follow the rules, just like a restaurant follows the rules, just like a cafe follows the rules, just like a retailer of anything else follows the rules of being in the commercial landscape of a state or a city. So that's all I'm asking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel here is the main thing anymore. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's fingers crossed there, and just this week, did you see the headline about the Delta 8 stuff?
Yes.
So I feel like, it's going to cause certainly even more confusion, when you're saying like those shops popped up with Delta 9 THC. I mean, there's going to be Delta 8 shops everywhere if, this stuff holds up, because who ruled on it? The appeals court said that because the technical definition of hemp is anything that contains less than 0.3% Delta 9, because we're talking about Delta 8, then it's legal. I've never actually tried it. I don't know any firsthand experience, but apparently it's psychoactive.
So it's no mystery if anyone listens, I drink Wonder periodically when I'm trying not to drink alcohol. And it does have Delta 8 in it, but it's Delta 8 lab tested through so it's part of the California supply chain. And
is it only Delta 8 or does it have Delta 9 as well?
It has both. Mm-hmm. But from what I understand, part of the reason that they formulated that way is that Delta 8 does have a little bit of so, I like tequila because tequila does kind of like have a spirit lifting quality to it when you consume it. And that's what I understand that Delta 8 can contribute when it's sourced cleanly and is effective. It can have kind of an elevating effect in terms of some folks feel like some of the cannabis that gives you that elevated feeling can give you that kind of also racy and anxious feeling. But I have not found that. So I don't know if that's the formulation, if that's truly the Delta 8's contribution, but I have found it to be a very pleasant feeling. So for whatever that's worth, I've never tried it on its own because I am somebody who believes in lab tested products. I'm not interested in something I don't know where it comes from. This is true of anything, like the coffee I drink, the wine I drink, the tequila I drink, the food I eat. I'm very focused on traceability and the sourcing of it. And so why would cannabis or anything else I take be any different?
Yeah.
What do you think about it? You said you haven't tried it. So yeah, maybe we should try it. Are we scared?
Yeah, a little bit, I think, for the same reason. Yeah, just, I guess, got to figure out more where it comes from. I'm sure some people are doing it right. There's probably people that aren't. I'd be curious to see. And what does this mean? Can brands like Wonder create new formulations and sell it everywhere, right? Is this the next CBD? Are we just going to see it everywhere, right? I don't know. Maybe right at this rate. Also confusing for the consumer, as people are trying to navigate this, whole world. If it's kind of confusing for us. I mean, I've seen a lot of online ads. I've seen ads on Leafly of brands like this that when I've drilled in, are Delta 8 brands, shipping anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, and now I just saw people are making Delta 9 out of hemp.
Interesting.
I'll send you the link. It's
it's still 0.3%, but they just put a ton of it. It's like the Texas loophole kind of thing.
I think, yeah, it's this company that sponsored a NASCAR car. And, you just made a really good point too. If all of this is happening, so it's not just retailers in New York that it's a problem for. We've been talking about, I'm excited about the brand building I think we'll see out of New York, but if it's too chaotic, it's going to be very hard for brands to show traction and to understand the consumer. And I mean, I'm hopeful they can get their arms around this.
Yeah, it's just another dimension when you add this Delta 8 in, just solely Delta 8, not mixed with Delta 9 and sold in legal stores, but I don't know, just on its own. I think it just adds a whole layer of competitive pressure for these brands that are trying to get established. So who knows? I mean, it's something we'll watch and kind of see as it matures. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's requirements on it. the CBD world, is there any requirements on, I mean, the FDA is like, you can't put it in like things you can ingest basically, right? That's why you see it
Food,
mostly topicals.
yeah,
Right.
or gel caps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember Tahira and Jacqueline were talking about this. But so yeah, I think you can do like gel caps and like kind of like medicinal forms, but
Mm,
you can't have it as like a cookie,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, some of the products I've seen being advertised are certainly not that, right,
Yeah.
for consumption. Anyways, we'll watch this for sure and see how it all plays out. But moving on from New York, I want to talk a little bit about New Jersey,
Yes.
because we have a
Big
full
week.
month now. Because we were doing our pool sides. It was April 21st. We were down in Miami, and now we got a full month of data on what's going on down there, and it looks like $24 million in sales for the first 30 days, about $5 million a week, give or take. It's an easy way to kind of remember it, kind of where it's at. And this was with 12 stores, right? There's 13 licensed, or is it 11 of 12 that were open at the time? Maybe that's what it was, 11 of 12.
Oh.
But because now I'm already losing track because more licenses are getting issued, more doors are
Yeah.
opening.
Yes. And Curaleaf opened, I think, the 12th door like today. Yeah. And then we got the great news that TerraSend and Air got their 3 doors. And then Ascend got another door in Montclair. So it was a good week for New Jersey.
Yeah, very, very cool. And for anybody who's really interested in the market, you can head over to headset.io, our website. We recently published an industry report on the first 30 days of sales. And there's some interesting stuff in here. Things around basket size, kind of comparing medical to adult use. It's something that, we were thinking, or what we see is adult use baskets generally are a bit smaller than in the medical. This is, I think relevant to markets like Pennsylvania, where you see, really large baskets, and same thing in New Jersey. A medical basket pre-adult use was about $150. For adult use, it's about $110, $112 at the moment. So a lot lower, but then you get the volume, right? You get a lot more people because you're not blocked by having to have a doctor's recommendation being in the medical program. Anybody can go as long as you're 21. So that's where, that kind of inflection happens, right? Basket sizes go down, but more people are buying cannabis. So, revenues for the state are going up, or sales of cannabis just in general are going up. Prices have gone up. This is another thing that's interesting. Like medicals is generally more expensive. And I think that it will be at a certain point. But right now, supply and demand, right? So prices are very high for adult use in comparison to medical, but I think that will change. You can imagine with 11 stores open to start that, and lines around the block, you could charge a little bit more, and that will change, right? With more access. I mean, it's just is an obvious thing, but it's interesting to see. So average item price in New Jersey for medical before adult use was about $44, and post adult use about $51. So, that's a pretty significant change there. You called out the per capita spend. There's a lot more in this report, and it's freely available for anybody who's interested. But on a per capita spend, we estimate, just kind of based looking at other markets, and every market's quite different. We were talking about this, like the California per capita is quite low compared to markets like Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, and probably needs to be higher, for different reasons. Obviously, access, retail locations, and all the host of challenges that California has. But we expect that to go up. But just based on kind of per capita in other markets, we estimate, New Jersey's annual cannabis market to be between 1.3 on the low end and 2.8 on the high end. And that'll really just depend on access, right? How many people can actually, go through. 24 million in the first 30 days is really good. But if you run that out, times 12, it's not that big of a market at the moment, but there's really not enough doors open at the moment. So it will come, but pretty fascinating to see, and just kind of fun for us to do because it is a new market and something we've talked about quite a bit. And, we source our data from our retail cooperators and have a good share there, able to do this. So I encourage listeners to go check it out. It's pretty interesting, and it'll be really interesting to look, let's say a year from now, and really, how much has it changed since then. So
I think it's exciting.
Me too. Yeah. And all this, the new licenses seem to be moving fast. I mean, that's great. 30 days in and they're already issuing new licenses.
Yes. Very good. Very, very good. So, and they even said it in the call yesterday. They noted there's been plenty of support for the medical program, so they're not feeling the patients are suffering on that. And in fact, the operators did, as we heard from the operators we met with, like Verano and Ascend, that they were making sure to prepare with local officials and the law enforcement to make sure that things were smooth and everyone was safe and the traffic patterns were not creating issues. You know, these are all really important things to be good neighbors as we open up. So I'm very happy with New Jersey.
Yeah, me
They're
too.
doing their damn thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so Northeast is coming around, and at the same time, there's some news out of Delaware. It's talking about good neighbors. Delaware being a bad neighbor.
Yeah.
The governor
Lame.
vetoed legalization, which I think we had talked about long ago. I forget the context. We were talking about Biden coming from Delaware. I think the governor maybe had indicated this at some point, but he actually did it, which is crazy. A Democrat, and just doesn't believe in it. And I guess it sounds like the legislature has enough to veto or override the veto. That's the right way to say it there.
Yeah.
So maybe there's silver lining. I mean, it's a small state, but yeah, it's the 2 step forward, 1 step back. I cannot even believe that was a headline.
So stupid. You know, it was just like, here we go. And the fact that he like used the kids as a foil for it, it's because of the children. I'm like, oh, stop it with that. You're just ridiculous. But another small and mighty state had a big moment today.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, right. Go for it. Rhode Island. Yeah.
Rhode Island. Get the yacht rock going, everybody, because it's time to go sailing and have cannabis. And the ocean state is fired up. And our good friends at GTI stand to benefit from that as they have operations there. So that's cool. Morgan was a URI grad. He may or may not have a Rhody Ram tattoo. If the market starts moving in the right direction, maybe we need to like come up with a benchmark. Then we can have a tattoo unveiling. We'll see.
I like that. Let's find out if he'll do it.
All right. So that was good news. We'll take it.
It's really good news. Which state do you think has a larger population, Rhode Island or Delaware?
I think Delaware might. No, Rhode Island.
Nope, Rhode Island. According to 2020 Census Bureau data, Rhode Island has 1.058 million and Delaware 967,679. So sub 1 million. I would have guessed Delaware too.
Yeah.
I would've.
I just thought where it sits. But Rhode Island has Providence, which is a big city, and Newport is fairly substantial in its way. Plus, the tourism is crazy there. That's a good bit of info. It's pretty densely populated across Rhode Island, too.
Mm-hmm.
I love it there.
I've never been. Now I've got a good
what?
excuse to get there. Yeah, never been.
Poolside, Rhode Island. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
They said they're opening. They said sales could begin as early as December. So they're Rolling Stones gather no moss, man. They're rolling for it. So good for them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Well, so there's good news there, bad news in Delaware, but I do think Delaware is going to come around and fix this problem with the governor. I mean, it's just crazy, but yeah, it's exciting Rhode Island and exciting December. I really do want to get out there to see it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, we should go. We'll go sailing. In other good news, it appears that Friday of this week, which will be May 27th, the 185 licenses that have been kind of held back in Cook County could be released. And this would be tremendously good news for the folks who've been waiting this whole time. I think it's over 2 years at this point. And it would be great for the operators who are ready to supply product to the shelves of these doors. So we're all very hopeful that this happens. And that's another cool state thing that we could see evolving.
It's insane that this has happened, that we've been waiting for so long, and all the litigation that's been going on, especially with a market that's as populated as Illinois. Really big news. So do you have a sense in this announcement, did they talk about like turnaround? Like once they get licensed, is it going to be pretty quick? I would imagine people would be racing to launch these stores.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think some of these stores have been built and ready and waiting for
just waiting.
Ages. Just burning. It's an atrocity. I'm very happy for these folks that it could finally come to fruition. And I think, it's these moments, just like we saw with New Jersey. The market doesn't care, but who cares about the market sometimes? I mean, it's painful, but we're always focused on building businesses. And this could be another one of those huge unlocking of opportunities and finally a show of progress, because these doors should have been opened a long time ago.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Lots of news coming out of U.S. states, I guess, right? I mean,
Yeah.
New Jersey, we talked about New York, Rhode Island, Delaware, Illinois. You believe, I mean, how many states, like in 1 week we can talk about? It's just like the scale is getting bigger and bigger. That's good. That's a good thing.
And Rhode Island is number 19 of adult use states. It's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Considering that when you started, there was zero. When I started, we opened with Colorado.
Yeah.
So it's been
That's
a wild
crazy.
time.
Yeah, it has. It has. In some ways it's going fast, some ways it's going slow.
I feel tired.
Yeah, I know. I think everybody does in some way.
Wouldn't make it here if it wasn't for cannabis.
Exactly. So moving on, I guess, back to Canada here. So there's some news. We talked about, RIV Capital and their Etain acquisition, and it sounds like there's a lawsuit from, is it JW Asset Management?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
who is
New York related. So you're
New
right.
York related. Yeah, I guess it's not Canada. Their RIV Capital is based in Toronto, though. But yeah, so JW Asset Management had a 20% stake. Is that what I read?
That's what the thing said.
That's pretty significant. And so the background here, right, is that RIV Capital is buying licenses in New York, basically buying Etain, which is a retail group out of New York, and making investments in the retail side of the business, kind of the operational side of the business. And JW Asset Management is also associated very closely with Terrascend and the Terrascend business, also a retail business. And a bit of a conflict there seems to be happening.
It's crazy. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, big fan of JW, and we'll see what happens there. But crazy times. I mean, there's a lot happening in this industry, and so some things are going to work out and some things are not. But
right,
this is a big headline considering that transaction, and you have the whole Hawthorne piece to it with the convertible
which is
note
related to Scott's Miracle Grow, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of parties involved. It'll be an interesting time for sure to see what happens next.
Yeah,
But
grab the popcorn kind of
grab the
situation.
popcorn, yeah. So
That is happening. What else is happening? Canada, but an American company here. The big news this week was Sam Adams, or the Boston Beer Company, getting into the beverage category officially by introducing a new tea product, THC.
yes.
TEA-HC. Yeah.
Teapot.
In Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you made a comment, the Boston Tea Party. Do you think they really did that? Is that why they did it?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I lived in Boston, and there's a lot of pride around the patriotism that came out of the revolution. And I think that Boston Beer Works, I mean, it's called Sam Adams for goodness sake. So I think it probably was a cute reference to the Boston Tea Party, but maybe not.
No, I mean, it would make a lot of sense coming from the Boston Beer Company that has a brand called Sam Adams to embrace the the Boston Tea Party. I mean, the only thing that's weird or different about it is that they're introducing it in Canada. And I don't know if that reference is going to land, They're still part of the Commonwealth, right? So
they are still about, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, that's incendiary. I mean, why not be a little bit controversial? I'm going to be a little controversial. I think, yeah, I thought it was cute. I'm not a fan of iced tea. It hurts my stomach and I think it's too sweet, but I think it's a great play and it's on brand. And I love when people do things on brand, and I think it's cute. So I'm here for it.
Yeah, I think it's just really cool to see them do this and to jump in like this with a real product, and not, you see a lot of alcohol companies that have invested in these groups and, let those groups, make the beverages, right? You got Molson Coors jumping in with Hexo, and I believe it was Hexo, and not Molson introducing a product, right? Hexo introducing a product. And so you see, Boston Beer Company do it. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah,
I will just say this is that Boston Beer Works / quote unquote Sam Adams, they were one of the first to really start leading the charge on the craft beer movement when it started
Yeah,
to
at scale, right? Like that.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I know it's such a funny thing. You go to the grocery now, and if you're in the beer aisle, there's so much craft beer, or like crafty beer, whatever you want to call it. Like, a lot of them are owned by ABI and others now. But I mean, it's crazy. But when Sam Adams first came out, it was really pretty unique. And I think they missed the boat with the seltzer. I think that they brought Truly to market maybe. I don't know if it was second, but at scale, they were one of the big ones that followed White Claw, right? And so maybe they're just trying to get in front of this cannabis thing. The bummer, I think, is, in Canada, the branding is so limited. The marketing, that's the downside. But I understand why they're doing it. And, no slight, I think it's, it's a very small category. I think it's going to be a growing category. I think it's something that, a lot of consumers can relate to. But the packaging is just terrible. Like, have you seen these cans? They're just like one color, and they've got like a small logo on them. And when you go to the website for this this THC, the can looks really cool, but it's not what you're going to see in reality, right? It's like an aspirational, this is a cool can. But if it was in California, that could be the can, right? It could look like that. Yeah. But I mean, I understand why they can't do it with federal legalization and all of that, but that is the bummer. But net positive, I think this is awesome to see, and I'm really excited, and I hope it's successful, and I hope that it'd be good to research, like, if Sam Adams is a large brand in Canada, like, does that carry any water over there? Because if it was here, I can imagine a lot of consumers saying, well, I'd love to go try it. I love Sam Adams or whatever. Like, sure, I'll go try their THC beverage, and maybe that's a way to introduce new people to the category. I just don't know if the brand carries that well in Canada. It may. I have no idea.
It's a good question. And we remember we saw Pabst had their beverage line at the PBR. So that was a beverage forward move by
in California.
Right. And they had their booth babes, which I was on board. I was like, they're doing their damn thing. It worked. It was on brand.
Yeah. But I feel like PBR is like still so niche, so like, hipster. I think it became so hipster that like Budweiser is now hipster. Like Pabst is like old news. And that's it. But Sam Adams is like, I don't know, a little more mass market, I feel like.
It is now. I remember when I used to drink Sam's Summer Wheat, and I thought I was extremely sophisticated. I think it was right when I was 21. I was like, I'm drinking craft beer. Because I actually really like beer. But there's a cool company here in San Francisco called Fieldwork, and they did a whole 420 release with their beers, and they got kicked off Instagram.
Really?
Yeah. But they were
just because of a 420 release? Like,
yeah, they did like a terpene forward. It was really cool. It wasn't cannabis terpenes, but as we all know, hops and all of these awesome aromatic qualities of beer exist already. And I think they just packaged it up as a 420 kind of marketing thing, and they got kicked off Instagram. And then they posted a really cute Instagram post about getting kicked off Instagram once they got back up.
Really? So they were able to get back?
They were, but not with their same followers.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know. I was like, maybe we should be friends. It feels like we're all in this together.
That's crazy, because Tilray has that brand that they bought, Sweetwater Brewing Company, and they make a beer 420, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like, none of this makes sense sometimes.
No, we're living in a glass case of emotion. I don't know.
So beverage in Canada, another big beverage maker in Canada is Canopy. Yes. They've got a fair number of beverages with like their Deep Space brand. They used to do Seth Rogen's a house plant there. I'm not sure if they still do. They might not have the license anymore, but that was like a Canopy beverage. Canopy made some news this week with the Jetty Extracts acquisition. So the Jetty Extracts, for listeners that aren't familiar, California brand, long-standing California brand, right? And, primarily vapor pen, I believe.
Yes.
And it was for $69 million, primarily in common stock for 75% of the company, which I think values them at about $92 million. I looked up some headset data here. Their trailing 12 months of sales in California was $39.7 million. In sales. So those are retail sales,
right.
Pre-tax, post-discount, and, about a 48% margin at retail. We can see wholesale pricing coming out of retailers. So that's about $21 million in like wholesale sales is what, they're selling into And I don't know if they distribute directly or they go through a distributor or whatever, but if that is their kind of revenue, it's like an enterprise value to revenue ratio of 4.5 on this deal, which is pretty good. So kind of interesting to see, especially when we compare and contrast to other announcements like their Wana deal, which we talked to Nancy in Miami about. I think that came up in the conversation at the poolside chat.
It did.
Yeah, and that was, I think, was it 300 million for Wana? Something like that.
Stand by. You can carry on. I will wanna.
Yeah, well, interesting, so they talk about, in this announcement, they talk about Canopy's robust U.S. THC ecosystem, which, robust, maybe a strong word, but it's certainly an ecosystem that is getting developed, right? They've got acreage now. They've got the option to acquire acreage assets, and then Wana brands, and now Jetty in California. It's interesting. I don't think Jetty is distributed outside of California. Wana is distributed in many places through, different relationships with organizations, just kind of a unique strategy. I don't know how, Jetty's a great brand, maybe it's as simple as that. But there are a lot of vapor pen brands out there, not just in California. So I wonder where this came from, how it came to be. Sometimes, what the strategy is, right? Because it does seem acreage is, okay, you got acreage over here, in markets like New Jersey, but not in, certain markets anymore. And you've got Wana in many markets, but their core market where they really do well is Colorado. And you got Jetty in California. So it's kind of like, are they just spreading the chips on the table? Is that the strategy here?
Strategy.
Capital S.
Is there a straight line here, or is it Occam's razor? What is going on? I don't know. I love Jetty. I've known those guys for a really long time. Actually, they were one of the first vape companies we diligenced. I remember we rode out to Grass Valley, met with Ron Gershani, who is a friend. I would consider him a friend. I haven't seen him in years, but when you kind of break ground with people. I remember going to their extraction facility. There was a junkyard dog tied up out front. It was in a storage facility in Grass Valley. I was like, where are we? What is happening? And we went and saw, and the guy was telling us about the supercritical extraction machine they had, that sometimes the pressure valves would not work. And so the cannabis would actually fly out of the machine and was creating shrapnel in their bodies. Cannabis shrapnel is potentially my favorite thing that most people have no idea ever exists.
No, I didn't know that existed. But
I'm not going to say which supercritical system it was, but because I don't want to have to say that,
Sure.
but it was one that, and it was funny because then Morgan and I, this is always how we really came to understand the market, is then we started diligencing supercritical systems, and there was Waters, there were a couple of others, but this was one that had been made explicitly for cannabis, and it had some technical issues. I was like, weed shrapnel is maybe my favorite thing.
But put it on your flak jacket to do an extraction.
Yes, exactly. For our listeners at home, please tweet that one. But I think that, they came from humble beginnings. They built a great brand, great quality. You know what? They were always quality first, and they were always focused on purity. And they were we introduced them when we became investors in PAX. We connected them, and they became one of the first and trusted fillers in California for the PAX pods. And
yeah, the PAX era.
The PAX era. And that has been a long and solid, from what I understand, partnership there. So yeah, happy for Jetty. I hope it's a good outcome in the end. I know there was upfront consideration and then some earnout, but they got definitely a multiple that's higher than I see for many things in cannabis if the total consideration ends up happening. So
yeah, good for them. That's awesome. Yeah, it's a cool brand. Always has been.
Cool. It is cool. They have cool roots, cool people, really nice people. I always thought highly of them as human beings, which is huge. So
yeah, well, same with Wana. So maybe we're starting to find a pattern here in Canopy strategy. But
yes,
maybe
nice
not.
people.
Nice people.
Yeah. By the way, you were right. It was 297 million.
297. I said 300. Cash, so I was way off.
The $3 million tip for the for the transaction.
A little rounding error.
Yes, it's a little chump change, that $3 million at that level. Well, it's not. It's real.
It's real. Yeah. Canopy will be doing their earnings, I think, this Friday coming up here. So probably about when we publish this, like maybe a day after. It will be interesting to see what they talk about. Maybe we can get some insight into the strategy. And then earnings in general, there's been, a few so far. I'm like super behind on this stuff. We haven't done our show. We haven't had McGinley on. So I'm like, behind on all this stuff. But it's been relatively soft, right? Is kind of the story.
I've been calling this the Valley of the Qs. Like, this was the quarter where the fundamentals came in, and it was kind of a period of slowed growth, but now we're back on the ramp. And we just talked about a million reasons why this market's going to light back up again. And so I think, we said it's like that Belle and Sebastian song, Don't Look Back, like Dylan in the movies. I'm looking forward to moving on. And so I listened to the Verano Q this morning while I was running. That was that. And here we go. Let's move on. So AIR is tomorrow, May 26th. CGC is Friday. And I think we can just say, I can't remember if anyone's lingering at this point, but I'm looking forward to what comes next.
Yeah, I'll have to catch up on all this. How do you listen to it?
Oh, good. Thanks, Cy. Cy's so good. He's using our run of show notes. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a helpful resource for folks because sometimes the platforms are not as mobile friendly for the earnings calls. And so Morgan actually taught me about this app called Quarter, and it's QARTR. So you take the E out on the second part of the word. And on that, you can follow the companies that you like to invest in or think about. And you can actually fast forward, run it at a higher rate of pace. And you can jump to the Q&A section, which a lot of times if I don't have a ton of time, I want to hear how the analysts are asking the questions and how the companies are answering them. I can read the details of the Q in their release, but I do like to hear how the teams respond to the Q&A. And so and you can go back quarters and hear what other quarters were. And sometimes I'll toggle, like I listened back to when I listened to True Leaves Q, I listened back to her last Q on quarter. So I found that to be a really useful app. And so I recommend it to folks who are out and about and want to listen to the quarters but can't. And like for me, the quarter call started at 5:30 this morning. It was really nice to have it on the app to follow up.
Very cool. I'll have to check that out. And we'll add it to the show notes so we can link out to it.
Good call.
Yeah. Well, great. I think that'll do it, everyone. Thanks for joining us again at the High Rise. If you're enjoying it, be sure you subscribe, tell your friends, and we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah. Have a nice Memorial Day weekend too, everyone. Right? Is that
That's right. Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for listening to the High Rise podcast, presented by Headset. For more information on Headset, visit headset.io.